Hi, my name is Lori Earl, and I am really happy to be with you today at this special event sponsored by Cure Childhood Cancer. I was asked to address moms who are bereaved, and I am happy to be here today speaking to you during this special event. One of the beautiful things about the Quiet Heroes Luncheon is that on a typical year when you're not virtual, you get to walk into a room full of women, and not just women, but moms. And they are moms who, like you, have heard the really difficult statement from a doctor saying, your child has cancer. I heard those words too when my daughter Esther was 12 years old. And we took her to the doctor because her side was hurting and she was coughing and it just wasn't quitting. It was on Thanksgiving Day, 2006, that the doctors called us and said that Esther had thyroid cancer and it was metastasized into her lungs already. You've been there. Fear, denial, hope, anger, self-blame, determination, a slow acceptance to a new normal, and then eventually sorrow and grief. Esther was a huge fan of Harry Potter. Now, I don't have a magic wand to take away your loss or even my own grief. I haven't learned magic tricks, but I have learned some things in the 10 years since we lost our Esther. And I hope that by mentioning them to you, you will find some truth to take with you, truth that will make you stronger. The strongest magic that we all have is love. Love is stronger than death, says the writer of Song of Solomon. Moms have always known that. Celebrate that love. Even when your child is gone, remember their birthday. Talk about them. If you feel like you're wearing people out, then write about them. Write to them. Take notes to their grave. Write a blog. Express your love. Your love for your child and their love for you is a never-ending story, truly. I've learned a lot about grief. Grief cannot be avoided, and it shouldn't be. You might know John Green's novel, The Fault in Our Stars. It's a book about two teens with cancer who fall in love. John Green was Esther's favorite author. She got to meet him. They became friends. And when she died, John wrote that book, The Fault in Our Stars, and dedicated it to Esther. In the story, Hazel's love interest is Augustus. And Augustus says, pain demands to be felt. He's right. You really cannot heal without grieving. And grieving can last a long time. Actually, I'm not sure it ever completely ends. But I can promise you that it changes. We talk about the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, expression, depression, acceptance. These help us remember that grief takes on different aspects, different forms. But these stages were never meant to be linear. Grief doesn't progress in a particular sequence or last for a certain space of time. And you don't cycle through it. You don't say, phew, I'm done with anger now, on to other things. Grief is more like the tide of the ocean. It comes roaring in. It ebbs out. It repeats. And that's normal. It's what you should expect. Losing Esther also taught me the truth that death is inevitable. I mean, we all know that intellectually, but we live in a country with a death-denying culture. We're so afraid of death that we try to hold it back with Botox and exercise and hair dye and surgery, anti-aging serums. We have such death anxiety that it makes it hard to accept that, in fact, we can't ultimately control it. And it makes it hard to accept that that is okay. In truth, death is part of life. I don't know how that hits you, but But ultimately, I think accepting this truth helps us slowly to accept the loss of those we love. So, we have the truth that love is stronger than death, that grief is how we grow, that death is part of life, and that, as John Green said about Esther, a short life can be a good life. The last truth I want to leave with you is the importance of letting go. Not letting go of grief or memories or love, but letting go of anger and bitterness, finding ways to channel that same energy into something positive. Letting go is a decision. It's an action. It's a choice that moves me from being a victim to being empowered. Holding on to anger can ruin marriages and harm the other relationships in our lives. Ultimately, it harms us the most. During Esther's wake, I vividly remember the dad whose 15-year-old son had died from cancer 5 years before. That father came through the line and he looked me in the eyes and he said, "It never gets better." I remember feeling stunned that he would say that to me in my fresh grief, that somehow I determined at that time that I was going to make sure that I moved forward, that I learned to find hope and a way forward. 15 months after Esther died, we got an email from her. I vaguely recall her telling us that she'd used an app to write a letter to her future 17-year-old self. She wrote it to herself as an encouragement, a chance to check in to see how she was doing. She sent it to our email, just in case. It was 8 pages long. It made us laugh. It made us weep. I'd like to end this conversation with you today by reading the last few paragraphs of her wise words. This is Esther's book of her journals, her memoir. And I'm going to read to you just the last few lines from her letter to future me. She says here, "Okay, future me, just try to be happy. Try to do things. Don't forget that many times you thought you'd never make it through the night. Remember all the people that have helped you in the past. Tell your family how much you love them." And then she says, just be happy. And if you can't be happy, do things that make you happy. Or do nothing with people that make you happy. She ends by saying, "There was so much more I wanted to say, and maybe I'll send another one of these if anything happens. I love you, and I hope you turn out good." And like Esther to you, I say thank you, and I hope you turn out good.